Welcome to the deep dive. Have you ever felt like the world is just shifting? Like the ground beneath our feet isn't quite as solid as it maybe used to feel.
Mm.
It's a feeling a lot of people seem to have, this sense that historical foundations are being challenged, both globally and, well, right here at home.
It's a really powerful observation, and it's pretty much exactly what we're going to explore today.
Okay.
We're diving deep into this whole concept of a shifting or maybe a new world order, looking at it through the lens of, well, recent events and some pretty massive societal transformations.
And you, our listener, you've given us some really fascinating sources for this deep dive,
Yeah.
including excerpts from an audio deep dive, actually from back in 2017, 2018.
Yeah, that was interesting.
It really captured the political shifts happening then, didn't it?
Mhm.
So our mission today is to unpack the critical insights from all these materials to help us all understand the various pressures and directions of change.
And that brings up a big question right away, doesn't it? Is the established international order, the one set up after World War II that's held for, 70 years,
Yeah.
is it truly under its biggest attack since it was created? Because, our sources suggest that while some might see opportunity in all this crisis,
Right.
others see a world in danger of being unmade. Quite a stark contrast.
It really is. Okay, so let's start maybe with the global picture,
Mhm.
because the sources definitely highlight this strong sense that the international order America helped, create and sustain
Mhm.
is now under, quote, unprecedented threat from multiple directions. So what does that actually look like on the ground?
Well, what's really striking from the material we looked at is just how wide-ranging these global tensions were, even back then. In Europe, for instance, you had the biggest protests in Romania since the fall of communism.
Wow.
Yeah, specifically against a decree that could potentially free politicians convicted of corruption. And at the same time, you had the worst fighting in months breaking out between Ukrainian troops and pro-Russian rebels.
So instability on multiple fronts there.
Exactly. These European events, both the political upheaval and the renewed conflict, they really illustrate this kind of fracturing of regional stability. It reflects that broader global fragility the sources are pointing to.
And that fragility wasn't just Europe, right? If we look over at the Middle East, the sources talk about changes in U.S. policy reflecting this too.
That's right. The analysis detailed the U.S. imposing new sanctions on Iran. This was after a ballistic missile test.
Okay.
And there was that quote from Security Advisor Michael Flynn saying, the days of turning a blind eye to Iran's hostile and belligerent actions are over.
Pretty direct language.
Very direct. He even mentioned Iran's death to America rhetoric and this belief that, quote, they don't speak anything but force. It really marked a very confrontational shift.
Could the sources give any sense of what the sort of longer-term implications of that shift might be, beyond just the immediate sanctions?
Well, the documents we looked at, they sort of suggest this shift signaled a more assertive, maybe less patient American foreign policy. Like the U.S. was recalibrating its approach to nations it saw as adversarial.
Okay.
And tied right into this was the State Department announcing that 60,000 visas were revoked.
That's 50,000.
In the first week of an executive order banning travelers from Iran, Iraq, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen.
Right, the travel ban.
Exactly. And that immediately created these ripple effects, didn't it? Setting the stage for some very different international reactions.
Yeah, absolutely. And just as we see these foundational shifts playing out globally, the sources also show how these pressures kind of bounce back, leading to these big international responses and domestic transformations too. Like just a day after that U.S. travel ban you mentioned, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau very publicly welcomed refugees. He said Canada would take in those banned by the U.S.
A real contrast in approaches.
Totally. Highlighting two very different philosophies. What's kind of chilling, though, is that only a day later, a terror attack happened in Canada. Prime Minister Trudeau called it an act of terrorism.
Yeah.
It just adds this really complicated, somber layer to those differing approaches, doesn't it?
It really does. And, it wasn't just Canada dealing with heightened security concerns. The material mentions increased security in France, too.
Right.
Because of a series of attacks that killed hundreds over a couple of years. And there was that specific incident at the Louvre.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that.
Where a man with machetes lunged at soldiers, shouting, God is great in Arabic, before he was shot. It just highlights this ongoing pervasive security challenge that, many nations were facing.
And amidst all that global tension, you also saw these corporate responses that sort of mirrored the societal divisions.
Like a Starbucks example.
Exactly. The chairman and CEO pledged to hire 10,000 refugees globally over 5 years. But then the sources also include some really strong criticism of that move, calling it political grandstanding, suggesting Starbucks should hire 10,000 veterans instead, and even inferring the CEO's move was tied to his beliefs about Donald Trump.
So it shows how deep these geopolitical and social issues were embedding themselves, right, into public discourse, even down to corporate policy and how consumers reacted.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just as nations and corporations are kind of grappling with these global shifts and the divisive issues they bring up, our sources show that similar, really intense transformations were unfolding within countries, particularly in the U.S., where societal tensions seem to be hitting a boiling point.
Like the Berkeley protests.
Exactly. The violent protests at UC Berkeley against Milo Yiannopoulos. He was associated with the alt-right movement, that far-right political group.
Right.
Those protests got so bad they canceled his speech. Rioters were setting fires outside the university. Pretty intense.
And it wasn't just on campuses, was it? There was that incident with a high school art teacher.
Oh, yeah, in Dallas. Placed on leave after posting a video where she staged a mock assassination of President Trump.
With a water gun yelling, "Die!" in what looked like a classroom.
Yeah. And then down in Southeast Houston, there were allegations against another teacher at Sterling High School.
What happened there?
Apparently, purportedly, punched a student and offered extra credit for anti-Trump demonstrations.
Oh.
And the student claimed the teacher accused him and Christians generally of being homophobic after some locker room talk, basically. These kinds of incidents, they paint a picture of a really fractured society, don't they? Where maybe formerly fringe ideas are clashing very openly. It signals maybe a breakdown in shared understanding, perhaps deeper than just political disagreement.
And then the sources shift to something even more, troubling. Direct street violence.
Yeah, that was a harrowing account. Masked rioters attacking people.
Including someone described as already covered in blood who they were calling a Nazi.
Right. And a witness intervened, fought off about 20 people, hitting the victim with sticks.
It's just incredible. What did the sources say about, law enforcement in that situation? Their role or perceived inaction?
Well, the witness's observation was pretty stark. Said the police were not really going in there, which led him to wonder if they were cowards or if they had an order to stand down.
It's an alarming picture, isn't it? Street violence and this perceived police inaction. It raises serious questions about, the very fabric of public order.
Yeah, are the traditional mechanisms still working as expected in this period of intense flux?
That seems to be the underlying question.
And if you connect that to the broader picture, the sources also point to pretty significant changes in longstanding institutions and norms.
Like the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, the Boy Scouts of America deciding to allow girls who identify as boys into the program, and California moving to be the first state to add a new gender option on driver's licenses.
Right, that was happening around then too. And there was that story of the appointed mayor of a small town in Texas, Collin County, known as a man for years, now living as a woman, explaining it in an open letter.
So these seemingly separate things, campus clashes, shifts in social norms like gender identity, the sources seem to suggest they collectively point to this deep societal reevaluation where fundamental ideas are being debated, redefined, and that this is a really critical internal part of this new world order idea they're describing.
It's a lot to take in, isn't it?
It really is. And when you step back from all these individual incidents, the material we reviewed, it offers this broader philosophical commentary.
How so?
Well, it describes what the source calls a mystery of lawlessness spreading.
Okay.
Elaborating on that as society throwing off the will of God, seeing it as, quote, shackles and restraints. The idea being that what was once unthinkable now has become doable and even desirable.
So connecting cultural and political shifts to a deeper philosophical change.
Exactly. I mean, it seems to be the argument in the source material that these things aren't separate, but are interconnected by this deeper, maybe moral or philosophical unraveling, making this period feel unique.
It brings up that famous question from Thomas Jefferson, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Can the liberties of a nation be secure when we have removed a conviction that these liberties are the gift of God?
Precisely. It suggests a fundamental shift in maybe the moral and cultural underpinnings of society.
Which the sources argue is becoming more and more evident. Like the curtain, as one source put it, is opening wider on what was once mysterious.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's clear that from The global geopolitical shifts to the international responses and these really profound domestic and cultural transformations, all these events contribute to this pervasive sense of fundamental change.
That metaphor really does capture the sort of chaotic feel that the sources convey about this period. It's like the world's in a massive crucible, like you said, and we're all watching it heat up. And the material we explored, it really leads us to wonder, doesn't it? If a new world order, maybe even a one-world government, is actually in the works.
Mm-hmm.
There's that really powerful quote attributed to David Rockefeller. "We're on the verge of a global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the new world order."
Yeah, that quote certainly gets cited a lot in these discussions. And the analysis provided, it highlights the assertion that we might be living in a time when the, quote, literal fulfillment of the idea of one world government and one world economy and one world religion has even been on the table for discussion.
So how do the sources primarily frame this new world order concept? Is it purely economic, political?
Well, based on what we've discussed, the sources we examine seem to frame it mainly through the lens of shifting geopolitical power
Oh,
and these evolving cultural norms, suggesting maybe a foundational societal reset is underway, rather than just, say, an economic realignment, although economic factors are definitely part of the picture, too.
okay. So as this curtain, as the source says, opens wider and wider on what was once mysterious, and these profound shifts keep unfolding, what does it mean for you, the listener, to be informed in an era like this?
That's the key takeaway, isn't it? What role might you play in understanding or maybe navigating these shifts, especially as this conversation around a new global order becomes, well, more explicit than perhaps ever before?